Are we happy to go on paying housing benefit of £30,000, £40,000, £50,000? Are constituents working hard to give benefits so people can live in homes they couldn't even dream of? I don't think that's fair.
Well, if you believe that the market is king, as David Cameron, just speaking there in the Commons this week, clearly does, then you'll be a big supporter of the Tories' housing benefit policy. If you believe that the Orthodox Jewish community in Stamford Hill in Hackney should be not just socially but ethnically cleansed from the area that they have clung to for, well, the best part of a century, you'll be a big supporter of the plans, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Because 94% of Hackney's 5-bedroomed houses in receipt of housing benefit are from the Haredim, the Orthodox Jewish communities who live there. If you, like Boris Johnson, however, are revolted at the prospect of such, to use his phrase, Kosovo-style cleansing of London, then you'll be against them. We searched high and low for a Tory to speak up in support of their policy today, and we couldn't get one. None were available. But Times columnist Hugo Rifkind has been good enough to join us, and I'm grateful to him for that. Hugo, you're a big supporter of these plans. You're going to go up Stamford Hill and explain it to the people there.
I'm not sure I am such a big supporter of the plan, but I'm certainly a supporter of. Well, I think the Tories are right in identifying the problem they've identified. It is absurd that people can claim so much in housing benefit. It is absurd that families who, either without an income or with a very low income, can afford to live in houses that families with a larger income can't. I mean, I think they're entirely right to have identified this problem. Whether they're entirely right in the solution they've found for it is another matter.
Ah, well, you were much more robust earlier today when our researcher spoke to you, so let's try and bring some of that robustness back. Are you going to go up Stamford Hill and tell the Haredim Jewish Orthodox community, who are living 94% of Hackney's claimants, in the houses that their ancestors and they have lived in for the best part of a century, and explain to them that it's, to use your phrase, clearly absurd that they should be living there?
Well, I don't think it's clearly absurd that they should be living there. I think it's clearly absurd that the taxpayer should be paying for them to live there. And no, I'm not personally going to go and tell them they need to move out. I think that would be taking the big society a step too far.
Well, you're saying that it's absurd that they should be allowed to live there, because they are...
That's not what I said. I said it's absurd that the taxpayer should be paying for them to live there.
Well, if the taxpayer stops paying for them, which is what David Cameron is intending, they'll have to move out.
Well, look, George, there'll be many people listening to your show who can only dream of having
a house in Hackney.
30, 40, 50,000 pounds a year in order to pay their housing costs. I know I can only dream of that.
Well, I'm not sure if that's true, but the reality is that the people who are being hit are not claiming 30, 40, 50,000 pounds a year. Let's stick with Hackney for a moment, if you don't mind. The people in Hackney in 5-bedroomed houses, these Orthodox Jewish families, big families, great thing, big families, I'm sure you'll agree, are going to lose £1,200 a month in housing benefit. That means they'll have to move out. They'll have to be cleansed from Hackney, which is not Knightsbridge or, dare I say it, Kensington and Chelsea. It's Hackney. But they're going to be forced to move out. Why?
I think cleansed is a quite hysterical way of putting it. I think these families are still entitled to claim £20,000 a year in housing benefit. That's not a small amount, George. I know you're a very wealthy man. Maybe it seems a small amount to you.
Not quite as wealthy as your family, Hugo.
Well, I think maybe you're mistaken there.
No, let me assure you, I've seen your father's register of parliamentary interests. Your father is a multi-millionaire, so don't give me that one. Yeah, you can laugh. You can laugh, but the public can consult the record and see.
Well, I think...
So don't give me that one. Don't give me that one. We're talking about the poor.
I'm certainly not here to defend my father's income stream. Well, and even if I was, alas, that money does not come to me, George.
Well,
£20,000 a year is a huge amount to be able to spend on housing costs. And I don't understand why people who earn maybe even only £20,000 a year should be taxed to provide that amount of money to other people.
Well, look, housing benefit to private landlords is only necessary because your heroin Margaret Thatcher sold all the council houses in inner London. True or false?
George, if you think Margaret Thatcher is my heroine, I can only assume you've never read any of my columns.
Oh, I read them all. I read them religiously.
She's not my heroine at all. I mean, it is possible. I live in London. I've lived in London all my working life. It is possible to live in London, paying £20,000 a year in housing costs. It should be possible to live in Hackney, paying £20,000 a year in housing costs. But it may not be possible to live in Hackney, paying £20,000 a year in housing costs in quite the sort of manner that some families have become accustomed to.
No, let me assure you
that is a problem. And
let me assure you that Stamford Hill is not Kensington and Chelsea. The houses that these 5-bedroom houses that these big Jewish families are living in are in no sense Beverly Hills.
Look, George, I don't live in Kensington and Chelsea. I can't afford to live in Kensington and Chelsea. I live in Camden. I'm well aware what £20,000 can buy you.
Well, let's talk about Camden. Let's talk about Camden. Because Camden is another borough that's going to be gravely affected by this. And the council there are one of the councils who are looking at booking in Barnet and elsewhere further beyond bed and breakfast accommodation for the families who are going to be cleansed from the houses they're currently living in. Also, that the package of cuts, which is 70% cuts and 30% tax increases, can be implemented by the Tory government that you support.
Are you, again, I'm not quite sure where you've got this idea that I'm such a fervent supporter of this government.
You're a rabid supporter of this government. You're a right-wing hack. So why are you pretending otherwise?
Well, again, George, I suggest you maybe read a few more of my columns.
I've read them all. I've read them all.
This is not the point. You will have listeners listening tonight who earn £20,000, £30,000, £40,000. Can you really justify saying to them that these families that earn far less, these people that earn far less, perhaps don't earn anything at all, should be funded by them to live in houses that they personally cannot afford?
But they're going to have to pay the taxpayer.
I'd be very surprised if your listeners are in favour of that.
Hugo, the taxpayer is going to have to pay the bed and breakfast costs. The difference is that people will be turfed out of their family homes and will be living in seedy, squalid bed and breakfast accommodation. Back to the future with the Tories.
I'd be interested to know how many people you think we're talking about here.
We're talking about 80,000 families in London, according to the Tory Mayor of London, Boris Johnson.
Yeah, well, did he use that 80,000 figure? I'm not sure he did. I saw that 80,000 figure today. That was an estimate by various councils. I mean, Westminster Council, are very expensive to live, estimated that this would affect at most 5,000 households. In Westminster, I'm sure housing is a lot cheaper in Hackney than it is in Westminster.
Only 5,000 households. Thank you very much indeed. Hugo Rifkind, game enough at least to come on the show and argue the point, though not quite as confidently as he was earlier this afternoon. 08717 223344. That's the number to call to join the great debate.